This is 3 Seconds Ahead. Thanks for joining me. If you like what you hear, please hit the thumbs up button and share it with your friends. So today's guest on 3 Seconds Ahead is Dalan Holton. Dalan and I have known each other for the better part of 4 years. We met on the Jiu-Jitsu mat. I was a Raging Bull white belt, and he was a less Raging Bull, I think high blue belt, if I remember correctly. He's now a brown belt, and I'm proud to say that he's my jiu-jitsu coach. We have great time on the mat together, and I've learned a hell of a lot from him. Apart from that, he's a dad. He has a business, and in his spare time, he's a race car driver. So an interesting life just from that little list there. So Dalan, just for those people that don't know you, where does your story begin?
The Jits journey kind of thing started, my family is quite into martial arts. Funny enough, my grandfather was in fact a brown belt in Japanese Jiu-Jitsu.
Mm-hmm.
My dad, he's a black belt in karate, understand Schmidt. So is my uncle. And from that kind of aspect, I've always tended to prefer the personal sports, sort of single, sports like swimming, as you said, motor racing and jiu-jitsu. I was never quite a team sport player. And once I discovered jiu-jitsu, it was amazing. The actual sport itself. I tried karate. I didn't really enjoy it. But definitely once I discovered jiu-jitsu, that was me hooked to.
Yeah, so that's where your jits journey began.
Yeah.
And I mean, what's interesting to me, and I didn't know that about you, is that your family's got a jits history. So it's obviously sort of seeped into your DNA. Because as I said, I have learned a lot, and over time and you've even told me that you were also once a Raging Bull as a white belt, and you've calmed down a lot. So that's I'd quite like to explore how we got there. But Dalan, there's the other day we heard some really sad news that our gym was closing. And we actually had a chat that Thursday. And what I've found over the last 33 or 34 days now that we're in lockdown is that I've come to realize that we may not be certain of a lot of things, but what we can be certain of is that we all, in some way or the other, have to begin again. And be that in jiu-jitsu, be it in your life, your family, businesses, all that kind of stuff, everybody's going to have to begin again, which is why I'm doing this, is because at the beginning of stuff, things can get a bit crazy and we tend to panic. And then the very things that we need to remember, which is the basics, we find it very difficult to remember those things. And you and I both know that on the jits mat, when you start breathing heavily, my God, there's a tap out on the way. It's about to come. Sure. So that's really what I wanted to explore. And when we were having the chat about when our gym closed down, there was something like really profound that struck me, and I made some notes, and that is, you said just towards the end of the conversation before I left, you said, you know what, guys, in 8 years of jiu-jitsu, or whatever the years, I've had to change 4 times to go to 4 different gyms, 4 different coaches. And,
correct.
What occurred to me was Dalan has started again 4 times. Yeah. So he must have learned something on that journey on, like, when you start again, guys, this is what I learned. Just focus on these things when you begin again. What have you learned?
Yeah, interesting question. I think, the moves, we went to 4 different venues. The kind of the guys tended to stay the same, and the philosophy tended to stay the same. So it wasn't too difficult to just pick up and kind of carry on. It was initially there's a lot of kind of anxiety about this whole move, like, oh dear, like, is this place going to be as nice as the old place? And there's definitely a level of anxiety. But once you actually get there and you settle in, and that becomes your new home, and then you're sad to leave that place, funnily enough, and then move on to the next place, and you kind of repeat that same circle again. And it's, I think we've all just got to just be adaptable. That's the one thing Jits does teach you, is to deal with pressure situations. Sometimes when somebody's on your back and they're trying to choke you out, it's to try and keep calm in that kind of space is what Jits teaches you. And so, you know, when we were moving gym to gym, we just got to kind of take those lessons from the mat into life. And, you know, it is going to be turbulent. It is going to change. Things are going to be different. But even though they were different, they kind of stayed the same.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
In what way do they stay the same?
Well, I mean, it was still the same guys. Some of the instructors were the same.
Mm-hmm.
You know, what we were doing on the mat was the same. And yeah, so, you know, that kind of thing, basically all that changed was the venue at the end of the day.
Yeah. So you said something interesting at the beginning, which was like, you know, when you move, the guys are the same and the philosophy is the same. And it sounds to me from what you're saying is that what made it easier was that there was a core crew of people that believed in the same thing, that held it together. So it doesn't matter what mat it is, but if there's a group of people that have a similar set of values and similar goals, whether they're white belts or blue belts, and that could relate to life, something that was the glue that held you together. Is that what I heard you say?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, you've probably noticed it already in the Jits environment. A lot of people come, a lot of people go.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of those kind of sports. But the core guys are there, and they're almost part of the furniture at the end of the day. And definitely that is the glue that gets you through. You know, you can rely on X person being there every Thursday night, helping you and teaching you and guiding you, and definitely is the glue that keeps it all together.
Yeah, it's great. You said something fantastic there. I'm going to steal it from you. It's the glue that gets you through. I like the way you said that. But, you know, so there's that glue that gets you through, which is philosophy. I'm quite keen to pick your brain on what exactly your philosophy is. And I know ours would be similar, but we've never actually asked each other that question. And then the other thing is like, why do some people go and some people leave? I mean, that's the second part of the question. But your philosophy around jiu-jitsu, and I would probably suggest it's got sort of infiltrated into the rest of your life. What is it? What is it? You know, what stands out for you?
So for me, I mean, a lot of people approach it differently. For me, I tend to be, I mean, this is the way I see it. Other people might see it differently, but from inside my head, I like to kind of work something and craft it and craft it and craft it and craft it and craft it. And I like to get into the nuts and bolts of things. I like to break them down into their very small little pieces, and then build from there. I know a lot of people do completely the opposite. They're not too technique based, and they're more kind of a feel based. But if you look at the kind of work I do, you know, I'm a software developer. What I tend to do in software development, or what I have to do, is take a big problem, break it down into very small components, little subroutines that do small little things, and then put it all together into the big picture. And that's kind of what I tend to do with jiu-jitsu as well. I like to go right down to the very kind of exactly where you place your hand kind of thing, exactly where you place your foot, exactly, and then kind of build my game from there. Yeah, so that's the way, and I like to do that. I like to really kind of break it down to its very fine little pieces, and then put it all back together again.
Yeah, that is that rings true for me, man. As a student of yours, that's something that I'm not good at. I tend to be more of a big picture kind of person. But when I've been trained by you, you've created an environment and a technique that allows people to get down to the nitty gritty. So now that you're saying that to me, I'm going, wow, that's actually one of the many things that I enjoy about you as a coach, is that you have the ability to break it down, because that's the difficulty. But yeah, that makes sense. And then in terms of other people on the mats, what keeps them there in your perspective, all the years that you've been there on the mat?
I think it's an interesting question. I think the reason why there's a lot of people come and a lot of people go. A lot of people start this thing and they don't follow through, and then the guys that do tend to stay tend to be a similar mindset. And jiu-jitsu is one of those sports where, for me personally, if a puzzle, if a problem is too easy, if something's too easy to get, I get bored very, very quickly. If it's too difficult to get, I lose interest quite quickly because I can't figure it out. I find with jiu-jitsu, it's a puzzle, it's a conundrum that you can never solve.
That's true.
Every time you learn something, there's something else to learn, and for every attack there's a counter, and for every counter there's an attack ad infinitum. But what I found with jiu-jitsu and the kind of guys we train with is that whether you're a white belt, a blue belt, a purple belt, doesn't really matter. The higher belts tend to roll at a particular level. So as a white belt, if I'm rolling with a white belt, I will roll at a particular level, just above where they are, so that they're still struggling to figure this thing out. I'm not going to smash them. I'm not going to kind of try and break them. But as you kind of progress, people start rolling a little bit harder with you, So this is a puzzle that you can never solve.
Yeah.
And I think that's why you get a lot of drop-off in the sport, because I think a lot of people like to solve a problem. And they want it to be solved, finished, put it in a drawer and be done with it.
Yeah.
Whereas this thing is not a problem you can ever solve.
Yeah, I remember having a quick discussion with you in the change room when it reminds me of this is your reference to the puzzle, is that jiu-jitsu is like getting a puzzle piece for a puzzle that you don't even know you're doing.
Sure.
Like you get this piece and it goes and you go, well, who gave this to me and what's it for? No, it's a puzzle piece. You've got a puzzle to build. Now, where must I put it? I don't know. I don't even know what the picture looks like. I remember us having that discussion, but I think your ability to break it down into small pieces allows you, so you break the puzzle piece down into puzzle pieces. And,
sure.
and that's a great skill. Certainly someone that's learning from you. It's a wonderful thing that you can do for people like me. So that's cool. So that's your philosophy, the reason why you got into it and why you've stuck with it. And fantastically, I mean, it also impacts on the way that you operate your life. And you've kind of merged the two things because, as you said, you're a programmer. But
sure.
I just want to refer to the next question that I have, and we do have limited time. And on the 25th of November, 2018, we sat down on the mat after we had, I think it was a Saturday, and we had a sort of a powwow chat, just talking about things. I think I was a late white belt at that point, and it was you. I think maybe Tony was there, Ryan, the angry shoelace, was sitting there with us, and we were having a discussion about jiu-jitsu, and I asked this very question. I said to you, like, what are the basics of this thing? There's so much stuff coming at you. What must I just focus on? And I went home and I made notes. I mean, here's my journal. I made notes. Okay. And you said something, which you said, okay, Andrew, listen. And I think Guy was there as well. And I said, just give me 3 things. And I wrote down submission. And then under submission, I've got armbar, choke, triangle, kimura. Just do those things. And then position. Okay. Back, turtle, keep moving. Those are the 3 things that came down. And then transition, which was base, balance, posture, structure. Now, that's what, I mean, there were 2 black belts on the mat. You were a purple at that point, and maybe a blue, and me as a white. And I wrote those things down. And then this is what you said. Don't forget 1, 2, 3, framing, lever, and wedge. Okay? Those particular things. And that's sort of the top of it. And then the principle of 2, you want to have control of at least 2 areas. Use your hip to block things also. At that point, I'd forgotten I had hips. I now remember I've got them. And then again, wedge. And then most stable base is a 3-legged pot. And that reminded me that I've got arms as well. And I can attack you can attack by using base as well. But those are the basic things. And I'll go back to the beginning one, which was submission, position, transition. And under submission, armbar, choke, triangle. So let's focus on that. Those particular basics, are they still the basics? Does that still ring true for you? And when we're going back to basics on the mat again after being off for 30 odd days, is that what you would focus on?
Absolutely, yeah. Particularly in this sport, or in this kind of thing, jiu-jitsu, it's gone 2 kind of routes. Originally it was a self-defense martial art, and a very, very powerful one. Then it kind of got a sport element to it, and guys started doing some crazy stuff, double flick overhead helicopter arm bars
Yeah.
and crazy stuff that in a real fight that's not going to work. You know, it looks fantastic and it looks great, but what I want to know is if I've got some big heavy guy on top of me and he's trying to knock me out, I want to go back to the basics, to the kind of fundamentals, as we call them, and be able to get out, to escape that thing, get out, get on top, and try to submit this guy. So definitely the basics, fundamentals for sure. That's what you need to concentrate on.
And what's so nice is now that we're still locked away, and Jiu-Jitsu isn't going to be actually rolling with people, and it isn't going to be happening in the very near future. I've got 2 sons, and I actually asked the question, geez, I feel a little bit uncomfortable teaching them, And Guy said, but Andrew, you know enough. And now, just by making these notes and going through them with you, I'm going, okay, well, I've actually got like a basic structure of what I could teach my sons to do. But there's one thing that I'd like you to explore a little bit further, that lever and wedge. We couldn't explore those particular concepts well. I mean, do you mind giving me a little bit sort of insight on the lever principle and the wedge principle?
Yeah, sure, no problem. So the lever principle is basically, I mean, a scientific principle of leverage. If you've got, I can't remember who said it, but if you give me a lever long enough and a fulcrum long enough, I can lift the earth, kind of thing. So it's the same sort of thing. You want to work on the end of the lever. So if I'm trying to attack a particular joint, let's say the elbow, for example, I want to pull as far on the end of that lever as I possibly can. So I want to pull kind of by the person's hand arm, a sort of hand wrist joint is what I want to pull, and then I'm actually attacking the joint before that. So you want to use scientific principles like leverage rather than strength. That's one of the basic principles of jiu-jitsu, is that it's technique over strength. And by employing the leverage principle, a fairly weak person with the right technique could break somebody's arm. For sure.
Okay, I'm glad you reminded me of that, because I'm one who naturally falls on my strength.
Sure,
so understanding that principle, actually, for the first time listening to you, I actually get it. So thank you. Okay. and then, I mean, that's just to let everybody know, I started jiu-jitsu when I was 45 years old, and I've got to work with a body that is not an 18-year-old's. So there's a lot of conditioning in me. So that's why it's important for me to revisit these basics over and over again, because I've got to unlearn a lot of stuff before I can relearn things. Anyway, so that's a bit of background. And then onto the wedge. Just again, I mean, I remember you speaking about sort of shifting your hip under somebody else's hip, and it allows them to change the center of gravity, and then it's easier to turn people over. Give me the lowdown on the wedge, the principle.
Okay, so the principle of a wedge is similar to putting like a doorstop in place. So it's just a little wedge that you're going to put somewhere, so that, let's say, if I'm trying to do a schoolboy trip on you, let's just say, argument's sake, if I put my foot and I hook behind your ankle, that would be a wedge being in place. Then if I pushed you over, you're going to go over. It goes a little bit further than that in like things like if you in a position, side control. So I'm on top of you, you've got your back flat on the ground, and we're kind of chest to chest, and I'm trying to pin you on the ground there. Pure strength and weight is not going to keep you there. I need to stop you from moving, basically. So I'm going to put a wedge in place. I'm going to put my knee as close to your hip as possible, and I'm going to put my elbow as close to your hip as possible, and I'm going to basically put, almost like I'm putting little wedges in place there that stop you moving. The same sort of principle as a door, stopping a door from moving. And then I really don't need that much strength to keep you in place.
Yeah, okay, good. Then you just got to get movement, because then you create the momentum will actually get your opponent over, because you've tripped them up. Okay, cool. Again, thank you. That putting little wedges in place, that's a mental image that I'm going to burn into my mind, which is really helpful. But Dalan, we're going to be running a little bit short on time. So first of all, I think I'd like to thank you for being here and being part of this. But before we end the chat, is there any message that you'd like to put out there to?
Yeah, I think, guys, it's just like keep our heads about us. It's a bit of a strange time we're living in. Let's try and take the lessons we've learned on the mat about dealing with pressure, dealing with uncertainty, dealing with the chaos of the role into life at the moment. We all need it. We all need to be able to deal with that kind of stuff. And then when we get back on the mat, I think probably what we all need to remember is that everybody's had a break. No one's going to be fit again and that much cold again. And it's all going to take us a little bit of time, but it won't take long. You know, your body will remember, and we'll get back into it sooner than you think. You know.
Okay, great. Thanks, Dalan. Listen, I mean, I'd love to. We could carry on for another 2 hours. Sure. So we're going to have another chat in the future. But once again, thanks for your time, and I really look forward to rolling with you on the mat and getting some instruction you on the mat. So, cheers, and have a wonderful day. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to hit the like button and share with your friends.